Let's do this again.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our office. My name is Will Marcus. I lead the Smart Cities and Technology for Cities portfolio here in this office, it's called Orange Silicon Valley. Orange is a global telco you probably haven't heard of much of. We're based in France, but we're kind of the scale of AT&T or Verizon just across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So we have 270 million customers across those markets. Plus, we do a global Orange Business Services brand that is kind of enterprise IT and communications and digital services broadly across the world. And we sell smart city solutions, for instance, in Middle East and France, and kind of growing in the Asia Pacific region. I'll give a really quick, that's my quick intro for the office. We're happy to have you all here. I know Ravi from a little while back. We tried to put on an Energy Unconference together, and that didn't end up working out. And so then this opportunity, yet. I love unconferences. And so we decided this is UN World Water Day. He's going to set the stage a lot more about why we're doing all this, and our speakers will as well. But as part of this world of, the population living in cities is going to double by 2050. How do we do that? And how do we do that in the face of climate change? How do we do that with limited water, among other things? So we're interested in maybe companies or interesting use cases that we can sell in our markets and other places. But we're also just happy to kind of be part of the ecosystem here, support it, understand what's going on, and learn from you guys. So that I'll let Ravi set the stage of the event. But welcome to our space. Enjoy.
Hi everyone, I'm Ravi Mickelson. I'm chief organizer, I guess, and founder of the Clean Web, which is now an online platform. So the Clean Web started several years ago as an initiative to get more people, engineers particularly from ad-click, distraction tech, software companies, to work on climate change and more important issues. And a bunch of meetups were started, and eventually everybody went back to doing other things. And so I became the organizer for Clean Web San Francisco when the organizer at that time gave it up. And so since then we've grown from 600, just over 600 members, we're at 1,500 now, and expanding. And so the plan is to create a platform, a network where basically, if you're raising money, you can find investors, hiring job seekers, looking for a job, you can find companies. And not only that, you can find community. So right here on the map, you see the green dots, those are the currently active Clean Web meetups. Went from 1 in January, we're at 5 now. We'll be at about 15 to 20 by the end of this year. Plan to have 100 by the end of 2019. And then I got into 2020 and I was like, well, that's the orange dots. And I was like, that's ridiculous, and I just stopped. So there's a huge push on deployment right now. Push more on just installing things, and we're losing on the research and development side. And we're not going to meet our climate change goals if we don't put more money towards innovation. And so of the 10 billion that's been invested so far this year, only 1% has gone towards early stage companies. And with 50 billion estimated to be invested total, we need to do a lot better here if we're going to meet that goal. So real quickly, usually get it from government, philanthropy, and angel investors. We know what our federal government is doing right now, basically just attacking us. Philanthropy, there's tens of $billions available, but they don't have the resources, primarily the VC skills and resources of discovery, diligence, and documentation. So that's why they're not involved. People are like, why not just go on AngelList? Well, here's the volume on AngelList. 0.14% is clean tech, and you have to talk to over 20 VCs who say they're investing in clean tech before you actually find one who's actually putting money forward. So that's the goal of the Clean Web, is to create that platform which we can allow for an easy and confident investing And it's a hybrid network, so we have a centralized online platform with distributed physical meetups that support each other. You're looking for a job, Andrew's posted a job for Buoy. I see he's coming to this meetup tonight. I'm going to RSVP and talk to him and show to him that I'm the person for the job. Launching our jobs platform, highly engaged audience. Who here is new tonight? Anybody? Look at that. So almost half the people so far over the last 14, 15 months, 15 to 25% of every meetup has been new people, and mostly people looking to get into the industry. So, but if we have this platform, it makes it even easier, because it's like, oh, what job did they post? What job did somebody say? Now they can, at the meetup, now you can just go there. So we're going to be in most of the major cities across the US by the end of this year, and even one in Canada. So if you know your friends, have them reach out and get involved. So I've been doing this at the climate change game for about half my life now, and I think it's a tremendous opportunity and a huge, interesting challenge. And also a fun fact, Ravi is Sanskrit for the sun, so that I mean clean energy was destined from the beginning. How to get involved: build cool tech, submit topic speakers for the meetups, share these meetups, join us on Slack, trying to get the conversation going. Right now, still mostly me and Francis and Jason pushing things out there. But if you're hiring, share your jobs with us. If you're looking for jobs, do that. So we are the Clean Web, and we want to support this industry to grow and to actually, gesundheit, to solve this climate challenge that we're experiencing. So with that, first, we usually start off with, is anyone hiring? If you want to just say a job. Francis is hiring.
Yeah, Advanced Microgrid Solutions, we're hiring almost across the board. Right now, we have business development, we have software engineers, project development, so you can talk to me. Francis Bell is next in case I don't talk to you when we get there.
We're hiring a job. Okay, you can say it when you come up here. You too. Okay. Anyone else?
Ethan Bialik from STEM. We recently got our Series D, so we also have a lot of opportunities all across the board.
All right. So with that, I'll hand it over to Jimin, and he will give a little intro. Why should we should care?
Awesome. Thanks, Ravi. While Ravi's doing this, since Ravi talked about destiny, I wanted to share a little bit about my destiny being in water. Found out 2 years ago that World Water Day happens to be on my mother's birthday. So happy birthday, Mom, and happy World Water Day to everybody.
All right, so thank you everyone for joining. And on behalf of Orange Fab and the Clean Lab, welcome everyone. A quick introduction of myself. My name is Jimit Shah. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Buoy Labs. We develop non-invasive water monitoring solutions for the commercial real estate buildings. Happy to share more about it later if anyone is interested. What we're here for is World Water Day, and what I'm going to do here is not try to shame anybody about their water consumption. And I'm not going to try to inundate you with a lot of facts about how we have 70% of water and only 2.5% is fresh and only 1% of that is accessible. What I'm going to do is quickly walk through a small story about myself, my inspiration of water, and why I care about it. This is Mumbai, India. This is where I grew up. This is the building I grew up on the 3rd floor in a tiny 150 square foot room. We call it room, not home. 150 square foot room with 10 of us in there. That same for a moment, 10 of us in 150 square foot room. 6 adults and 4 kids. Every morning, mostly women and a couple men would line around our room, and on the left you see a little faucet on there, on the left on the wall. Clean water would come out, and you have buckets of water that my mom and my aunt would carry every morning, based on the quota you had for how many people with in those rooms in your homes. And on the right is a hand pump, if you were lucky enough to have a hand pump in your own bathroom to get clean water. So this is how I grew up for most of my life so far. And when I moved to America about 14 years ago now, I was surprised to see that where clean water is pouring out of your faucets and your toilet. I remember telling my friends back in India how we could actually drink the water out of our toilets, and they were surprised. So through that journey, I started talking to a lot of people about, are you familiar with how much goes into the water that we're receiving when we turn on the faucets? And I realized that not a lot of people knew about it. Of course, I didn't know about it. I was new, but I'd like to share a couple of slides with you guys and gals. This is from American Water Association. This shows how water works. This is a slideshow that actually American Water Works Association goes through with high school and elementary kids. So let's go through it real quick. Over here on the top left, 1A is a reservoir, and then the 1B is the river. Those are the sources of water. 2 on the bottom right is the treatment facility. Water flows down to the treatment facility where it gets treated, it gets clean, and then goes to the top over there for storage. That's where it gets stored, and then it gets delivered to the main lines on the floor, and then from there it goes to your service lines, and then to your homes and your commercial buildings. This is what the utilities do day in, day out. That's their job. And after all of that, we get our water clean, pristine in our homes. For all of those who are interested, our water in San Francisco comes from Hetch Hetchy all the way from Yosemite. So every time you're turning on the faucet here, it's delivered all the way from there, clean, transported, and to our homes. It's a pretty phenomenal system. And we have 55,000 of these water utilities in this country that transport water for the public, for domestic usage. Why does this matter? My one slide did not show up. Oh yes, because we PDF'd it. Education. Education is something that I realize over time that's missing in this space. Ravi captured the other part of this, investments. I've cared about both these things quite a bit. Today we are literally in a crisis in not just America but globally. When we look at South Africa, we look at Australia and Israel went through this crisis early on. And today we're looking at about $1 trillion in spending over the next 20 years to revamp our infrastructure for water. And because of that, we're going to be seeing some massive costs for our water. So this is a chart I'd like to share to folks to really bring out that, I don't want to scare anybody, but it's really about awareness of what's happening in our country today. Some quick facts: about 1 trillion gallons of water is lost every year in households alone. That's about 11 million homes, anywhere super 11 million homes. An average family wastes about 180 gallons a week. That's 300 loads of laundry that we could be doing. And finally, commercial buildings are losing hundreds of thousands of gallons all the time without even noticing, and that can be massive losses. So what I want to leave everyone here today on World War Day is with three things. First, let's all educate, learn, and share what we learn with others. Second, recycle and reuse wherever we find opportunities. And finally, conserve and be stingy. Be stingy wherever you can. You'll be surprised how much you can get done with so little. When we started Buoy Labs, we did this little experiment, and my wife wasn't too happy about this, but I posted a blank sheet of paper next to every water consumption, next to my faucets, next to the toilets, next to the shower, and we check in every time. This is the check-in time, this is the check-out time. Check-in time and check-out time. We did this for a good month, And after that, my wife really got upset, and we had to automate something there. But the result was, even today, she tells me that just that little awareness, her shower times have reduced dramatically from 10 minutes to 4 or 5 minutes. That's a pretty significant change. She's not here to validate this, but I promise you that has changed. So with that, I'll leave you with some resources. You can find some information at these 3 sites. There's obviously a ton more. I can talk all about it, but these are some phenomenal sites that you can find information for. And as we go through the rest of the presentation, I would encourage that we all appreciate this one special resource that we have and think about how we can protect it for our future generations. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, take it away. Awesome, thanks. I'm gonna press, is this on Zoom? Yeah, it is. Great. All right, great. Hey guys, how's everyone?
Good. Good. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. I'm excited to chat here with you guys. This is a great topic. We have a little bit of a historical connection to the Clean Web, actually. Oddly enough, like back in 2013 when the company got going, there was a Clean Web meetup, I think, at Berkeley, and basically who ended up being one of our lead engineers, founding engineers, and astrophysicist, heard about this company getting started out of the Stanford GSB Earth Sciences group, and then joined and grew. And so when we got pinged and they were like, "Hey, we want you to come," it was kind of like, how could we not? It was there was a lot of connection there. So we're excited to do that. And like what you guys are doing here, my cousin had started the Clean Tech Open a little while back, which was like a business plan competition for clean tech stuff. And since long, way out of it, they've moved on to other groups, but seen a lot of like incantations and so people trying to do stuff in this space, and so it's not easy. And with the meetups, I did the Urban Ag Tech meetup is one of the ones I co-organized, and so it's I know how hard it is to kind of get people together and get everything going. So really great to see what you guys are doing. So Ceres Imaging, this is kind of why we were invited here is that I think at the core of it, we have a lot to do with water management. It's not the only thing that we do in agriculture technology, but it's one of the big value propositions that we bring to growers, is helping them manage that as an input really effectively. So, the start of this company was 2013. Our founder Ashwin was at Stanford. Like I said, he had been working down in Brazil before that, consulting, kind of seeing a lot of waste, how little information growers really had to make really important decisions about how they use their inputs. And so, and also at the time, there were there's like this $6 million NASA sensors, hyperspectral cameras. I'm not sure if any of you guys are know much about like spectral imaging or anything like that, but I'll talk a little bit more about it later, how we kind of use it. But basically, like real fancy camera, get a lot of data about all different parts of the electromagnetic spectrum and light bouncing off of plants, and what you can tell about the state of them and the health of them and the nutrients, etc. The problem is it was really expensive. So the start of the company was like setting out to try to build a much cheaper version of that and bring that to the market so that farmers could actually use it. And the first really key, the killer app, the first killer app for us and what we did was all about managing water in California for tree nut growers and almonds specifically. So that was the bread and butter for like 3 years. I joined about a year ago, so the company's about 4 years old. And this is some of our recent press and things. I mean, we won the Imagine H2O challenge and kind of Wired article that covered us, and really we figured out how to help farmers manage water much better kind of in real time. And I'll give you some images and show you guys, and happy to get questions. I kind of interactive is sort of more fun for me, and I'm used to being on farms and really kind of digging into things. So. And I suppose I didn't say anything about me, but if you saw the brief, I run product over there. So head of product, and my background was
Stanford, symbolic systems. I'd done zoology research before that, then neuroscience. Got out, ran a enterprise software company, did the founder thing, raised a bunch of money, built that up. Got into agriculture afterward, just trying to grow stuff and screwing it up. And then I was like, there's got to be technology and sensors that can help me do this better. And then prototyping some of those, and then getting linked up with Ashwin. It's been a fun ride. I'm a sailor, so I'm like always on the water. I love the water, and so I just think about that a lot. And let's see, so remote sensing, just a quick background. So we do this aerial imagery, the spectral imaging that we do. Remote sensing basically came out of the Cold War. The point of the whole thing was to monitor the Russians and kind of count how many bomber planes that they were building up and try to detect that. So it's light up to a satellite down to us, do some analysis, etc. So that was kind of the start of remote sensing as a field. We sit squarely in that field, and we provide imagery for growers. So the short of it is, we build a bunch of fancy cameras and ourselves, and calibrate them and everything else. We strap them to planes, we fly them over the fields, collect all the data. We've got a whole bunch of analytics and image processing, computer vision, machine learning work that we do on that, and a whole lot of time that's been spent with researchers and academics to build what we call like ground truth data sets, like data from the ground, measuring the plants and understanding how our imagery relates to what they see on the ground, and being able to really build out crop models for that to really help the farmers understand, hey, here's what this means. And I give you this image and I show you this red spot. This is what it means in terms of the stress of that crop and whether you have a water problem in that area. And then we work through with them, we talk with them, and as you can imagine, one of the things I'm really passionate about is kind of bringing technology to these spaces where there isn't necessarily a lot of tech savviness. So, if you're in enterprise software or something, you're selling to people who live and breathe computers, and it's just so different than, like, I do a lot of my work in the Midwest, and I walk out there and I'm on farms, and it's just so different than being in the Bay Area. I really encourage people, just when they're thinking about problems to solve. I mean, we were hearing about Mumbai earlier, and just to try to step out of the Bay Area and really understand what the real world looks like. This isn't the real world. It's a great world, but it's not the real world. It's not most of the world. And getting that perspective really shifts things, I think, and how you think about the importance of the technology, but also how does somebody consume it? How do they interact with it when they don't? They might be pretty. They might even actually be a little antagonistic towards where we come. Silicon Valley and the technology. And a lot of people have gone in with like a holier than thou kind of attitude, a sort of an attitude of like, we've got tech and it's going to solve all your problems. You don't know what you're doing. Now we're going to make you all smart. It was done before, and it's like that doesn't get you any friends. So I won't spend much time here, but the company is growing fast. This relates to the hiring thing. I joined about a year ago. We were 15, maybe 18 people. We're at 50 now. Big expansion to the Midwest. It's gone successful. This is, we're going to be over 1 million this year. Still growing fast. We'll do another big round this year and go from there. So, and just to show you, I'm going to focus a little bit on tree nuts and vineyards and the crops where we focus mostly on water, but just give you an idea of like all the different crops and areas where we do our work. California was the first one. We do a lot of work in Australia as well. Hawaii, the U.S. Midwest, where I focus a lot of my efforts, Pacific Northwest, and kind of expanding from there. So a lot of government grants to do this work, a lot of support from them because of the fact that we help people manage resources. Yeah?
I don't think you're talking about this. Do you use human pilots or drones or whatever you can do?
Yes, so the company started out using a drone. That was the initial hypothesis, was like, yeah, it's going to be a drone. It turns out, farmers don't care at all about what you use to get the data to them. And drones, just like, they don't cover a lot of acres. They can only fly for tens of minutes at a time. They can't carry heavy payloads, so we got big cameras, and those don't go very far. And the other funny thing is that they'll get taken out of the sky by red hawks and eagles. Fly too close to their nest, which we've encountered at times. So it turns out there's just a huge network of planes out there. There are airports everywhere. There are these Cessnas, and it basically runs like an Uber or Lyft model. We don't own the planes or anything. We provide the cameras to them, and after they run in their plane, they strap it onto the strut, and they just follow the thing around like a little video game, tells them where to go, they collect the data, then it gets all to our servers, and we do all of our work on it. So we have no infrastructure on that side with it, except building these camera systems that we send out.
How frequently do you fly over the same service area?
Yeah, great question. So highly variable and mostly determined by the crop and the needs of the crop and the objectives of the grower, what they're trying to do. So the short answer is someone might be starting out and just say, hey, we're going to image a few times in that area, 4 times over the season, let's say, or 4 to 6, maybe we're going to do a monthly flight, we're going to kind of check some irrigation problems, some infrastructure stuff. In the Midwest, we launched a product for early detection of pest and disease. And so in that case, once we get into the key period where the pressure is increasing, we're flying every single week with them. And on the flip side, we have people, as far as managing irrigation, that are using the product and flying every week. And every week, the entire irrigation team for tens of thousands of acres gets together after our imagery is published, and they're looking at it and flying over it and coming up with a plan for the week. So there's a bit of a range there in the level of sophistication and how far they've adopted, but we're seeing them move in that direction up to a pretty high cadence.
Is your expansion plan, your geographic expansion, is that based on sort of the price of water or other factors?
Yeah, good question. This would have been actually a good slide. So tree nuts, there's only like 1.5 million acres of tree nuts in the entire U.S. So if we're just going to ballpark something, if we charge usually on a per acre basis, it's kind of like a subscription model for the year. They're paying for data and to get access to the imagery through our application. They don't buy the sensors or anything like that. So, if we were charging up to like $20 an acre over the course of a year, that's a $30 million market. So I'm sure, as you know, thinking about investment and everything, that is not a big enough market to raise a lot of money from a venture capitalist in. So, and probably like, I don't think there are any almonds in our food, but like 1 in 4 of the almonds you eat is imaged by us, like anywhere. And so once we really had the value proposition, we were able to show it, we were able to grow very, very quickly. Start to get a lot of adoption afterward, and that's its own thing about kind of how you enter these markets. But it was a little bit more of the Tesla approach of like build the roadster, focus on these crops that have high margins, these specialty crops, tree nuts, so in almonds, pistachios, walnuts, into vineyards, etc., adding the acres. We could really build out the technology, figure out how to make it work, how to go to market. Got great growth, revenue. Company was cash flow positive even before I joined at the time of the Series A. And then from there, it was like, all right, we got to go from the minor leagues to the majors. So like corn and soybeans was the big focus. Getting to the Midwest was 180 million acres of that. At that point, you've got to really, if you can figure out there too, and then you look at all the states you can expand that to, big opportunity. We also look for similarity on crop and value proposition. So it's like Pacific Northwest, we're moving into apples. We also started to do really well with other specialty crops in the Midwest, like potatoes, sugar beets, things like that. So it's this combination of like what's nearest in terms of what we do today, the value proposition, the tech, how easily can I enter that market, versus how much new R&D do we have to do. So like corn and soy, for instance, they don't irrigate those crops. So water is like, the solution is pray for rain. So that's not going to be the thing that gets you into the market. So we had to come up with something totally new. So that was a big, investment on our part to figure that out. So it's a combination of those two things, and then, and also where we just have deals coming in, international. Brazil will probably be one of the next big spots we move internationally. Won't spend much time on this, but we're going to, I'm going to focus on optimizing irrigation here. But there's kind of like a big 3. Another one is the fertilizer, so fertility of your crop, nitrogen, measuring chlorophyll leaves, and early detection of pest and disease, which also helps the companies that are doing the scouting on this land operationally manage their labor a lot better. So these are kind of big areas for us where we're really strong. And I talked about this, the hardware, a lot of machine vision, image analytics, everything that happens in our pipeline, our analysis. A lot of PhDs on our team. This is a very science-driven company. Very close collaboration with universities and other types of research partners. I won't get too much into this during this, but I'm really happy to talk about like how do you do R&D in a high-growth company and thinking about how you actually scale that as a company grows to keep reinvesting it. That's an area that a lot of interest of mine. So we've been figuring out on the fly, having some success, but also there's a lot of challenges. And that feeds into all the data modeling. And the big thing is detect problems before they become visible to the naked eye. That's going to be the case across everything here. We'll look again at the irrigation a bit, and I'll kind of walk through one of these examples, but that's the name of the game. Can you detect something before they could have seen it, their team could have seen it, so that they can actually get out in the field, act on it at the right time, in the right place, And then that's going to usually either means they've wasted far less of the input, whatever it was, in this case maybe it's water, they detected a problem, they're going to get better yields, increases their profits, better for the environment. It's like a very win-win-win situation when it works, which is great, and that's also why we've won a lot of grants from the government to do our work to expand into Hawaii. The Water Board of California kind of helps subsidize the adoption of the technology. That there's a lot of ways you can get support once you show that this is a sort of very obvious good for the crop, good for the environment, good for the farmer. Okay, cool. So I'll talk a little bit about water stress here, and just kind of introducing it. This is what you're seeing. This is a pivot irrigated crop. So there's many different ways of irrigating a crop. You guys might be familiar with like drip lines that you kind of run, and they have little emitters, and that already itself is a big technological innovation compared to it used to be like flood irrigation, which is exactly what it sounds like. You try to get a field perfectly level, and then you just flood it with water, and it gets into all the spots it needs to, but you obviously get a lot of evaporation. Sprinklers are also kind of an innovation. A pivot is, if you've ever been driving in the Midwest, I mean, it's basically like there's a giant boom, and it's on wheels, and then it runs on a circle, and it just pivots around, and it drops water, and so that's why the crop is growing in a circle, because that's the end of the boom. What our water stress imagery doing is basically looking for temperature differences in the canopy of the crop. So a plant has to transpire, right? So it's like, you remember back to bio in high school or something like that. It's there's water, it's evaporating, it's hot. At the top, it's leaving, it's pulling it in through the roots. There's a full column of water going up through the plant. That's how it moves all of its nutrients. It has no circulation, and so if that plant gets stressed or doesn't have access to water, its temperature is gonna increase. And you can start to detect and measure these increases in the canopy temperature in order to figure out where you have problems. And what's interesting about it is that it's a real-time measure. So this is not something we have to wait for the problem to show up. It's like if I had 10 trees in a row and then I cut off the water to one, I'm going to immediately start seeing that problem show up in the imagery. The plant might look fine. To your eye, it looks great. But if you can detect that before it starts to show up with the plants like losing leaves or yellowing, it's drying out, whatever it is, obviously that's going to dramatically improve your ability to grow that crop. And just some cool things though. I won't get too much into the science, but if there are any scientists that want to dig in, a lot of university trials that we worked with, and this was just kind of showing they were running water restriction trials, and this is for SWP, stem water potential. So this is a measurement of the water pressure that is in the plant that a farmer is used to taking on the ground, and we're relating our aerial imagery to those measurements so that they can say, hey, that thing I'm used to doing by hand on one plant, you guys can give me across every single plant, every single tree in an entire field in one go without having to install anything. Kind of amazing. And so this just showed they're running these trials and how it relates to the colors that we ultimately produce for a tree to say, here's the water stress, here's how stressed this plant is. The measurements are good. Kind of want to just get into some use cases because this is the fun stuff. This is where we work with customers. So this is an example of water stress imagery. So what's going on here is, we're measuring all these canopy temperatures, and then there's a whole bunch of stuff we have to do. We have to separate out, what's vegetation from soil, shadows, all of those things, throw that off. So you're trying to separate all it out, figure out on a pixel by pixel basis what's actually the light, the data that's coming from the plant, and then actually trying to combine it all together for one tree. So you ultimately give it one score, and you can say, all my pixels, all the information I've got, this tree is in this status, and assign it to kind of these 4 big bins. And when you start to see these big patterns, so anywhere you start to see a really linear pattern, that's not how nature works, and that usually means that there's something going on with the irrigation. So any patterns that people, obviously there's a bunch of arrows here, like pointing out stuff, but any patterns that like jump out to people, like when they look at this is literally how we start with people. So they're just like, hey, what do you see in this image? Anything?
There's flooding in the middle.
Flooding in the middle, so you're thinking about this right here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Beyond the obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Seen a lot of vertical lines, some horizontal lines, so probably the fields, the rows running.
Rows, exactly. They're running up this way. And you can start to see that these bigger patterns emerge where it's like, oh, there's this giant rectangle, or this kind of rectangle in here seems to be not as good. And that's because once you know these fields, you realize that the way the irrigation works is typically like it's a big pipe running this way, then they've got other ones running this way, and then the offshoots of that, it's sort of like this man-made, capillary pattern out there. And so when you start to see patterns like this, they can see, oh shoot, I've got like a valve is blocked. Like something is going to stop water getting from this entire portion of this. So the valve, whatever controls this whole thing, it's not looking good. Other times you'll see this drop off of like green to yellow to red, and that might be a pressure problem. So it's getting good pressure in the middle where it starts, but then it's actually decreasing, it's not getting to the ends. Could be a variety of reasons, maybe a leak, right? It's like if you imagine trying to use a straw that's got a bunch of pinholes in it, and it becomes very hard to actually get liquid up through there. Yeah?
Yeah, how well would you say your growers are equipped to respond to this like diagnostic map? Like, do you find that their existing irrigation hardware is sufficient, or are you guys also sort of like prescribing new technology solutions for them in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, we would, I would love to have all of them on some sort of kind of like variable rate irrigation system where we could tell them and prescribe like how much to put the different areas to address it and have that whole like kind of control system. The reality is that we just got to work with whatever they've got because they probably don't have the money to invest in making that change. Because you start looking at, we're not dealing with small fields here. Like we're talking thousands, if not in some cases, tens of thousands of acres. So even a new system is just like the capital expenditure is enormous. So in this case, really what they're doing is trying to find out, where do I have problems? I have people that can deal with this stuff. I have irrigators that know these fields, but they simply cannot walk every single row and try to find and spot all of these. Like the way that they spot problems in a drip line, and drip line is funny because it's like micro emitters and stuff. They're great for reducing the water that's out, but they're also really prone to breaking. And so it was like a great thing and a bad thing because they introduced a whole bunch of maintenance issues for people, but they also increased water use efficiency when you are actually doing it well. And so for us, it's really just about, hey, we're going to help you use that labor a lot more effectively. They can see this image, they can spot a problem, and they can go directly to that problem and address it. And they've got the folks, but just walking all the roads, what ends up happening is that by the time you've gone around the whole field and you get back to the beginning, I mean, you missed stuff for a while, so either that really reduced your yield and your output, or you were just like wasting and dumping water in some place where you didn't need to. And so that's one of the big things that, and we've shown, got a couple slides of this later, but how our measurements, and even at the end of the season, how all of that relates to ultimately the yields that you get, kind of a multi-year study that we've worked with UC Davis to do to kind of validate and show the effectiveness of that. And that's, for them, it's all about like, help me find the problem faster so I can address it and then keep everything perfectly even. That's what they want, is just a perfectly even field. Cool. 10 minutes we're in, 10 minutes left?
Yeah.
5 minutes? Well, yeah.
10 minutes left.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So for the sake of your business model, how much of what the value that you deliver is, shall I say, low-hanging fruit that's maybe a one-time fix versus things that you can sell them on getting your services year after year?
Yeah, absolutely. So in business 4 years now, we've got a negative 30% churn rate, which will kind of back into this question of nobody cancels and everybody increases the size of their contracts over time. So yeah, there's the initial let's fly and let's just catch some big infrastructure issue. That's definitely low-hanging fruit. It's like we fly, we know we're going to find something. It makes that first meeting really easy if we did a test flight because it's like, here, what's this? The guy goes out and says, oh shoot. But the reality is that things are always changing, and the problem is that Mother Nature's just always throwing growers a curveball. Things are shifting. Your soil conditions. You've got a wet spring, a warm spring. Like how dry is it? You need to change what's happening in different areas. And this equipment is just kind of always breaking and stuff too. So really, what they start doing is just learning more sophisticated ways of integrating it into their operation, and that's where they kind of just level up beyond the kind of core infrastructure issues that are the sort of obvious ones of like something's broken, you have to go fix it. And even the broken stuff, it's like one of the big things is that a lot of times it's, if you went and walked out there, you would see water coming out, so you would think there's not a problem, but it's a reduced rate for whatever reason. Maybe like the filter is actually a bit clogged, and so a little less is coming out, and that's what's causing this tree to show a bit less stress. And so those kinds of things, it's like you just can't catch them any other way, and even once you do it, stuff still gets clogged over time. They run a lot of fertilizers and stuff through these lines at different times. They might run gypsum, different minerals, and all of those can clog up the line. So it's a constant process of trying to respond to it. Yeah?
On the water side, like how much of what you guys are figuring out results in decreasing water usage where it's being overused versus finding things like clogs and broken distribution?
Decreasing where it's... So Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a mix, I would say. I don't know if like I can give you a breakdown of how much is one versus the other. In general, obviously, growers like want to get the right water in the right places and increase their yields, and that's been a big thing. So like almonds, if you were 10, 20 years back, they had much lower yield, about half of what they have today. So they increased water usage on this crop. They actual recommendations on how much water, what your max was, on how much you should apply in order to get a really good yield. They realized that they were cutting it too close, and they actually started saying you should apply a lot more water, and they could double their yields, but the water use efficiency actually went up dramatically because yields went up hugely relative to the amount of water that was being put on the ground. And then certainly if you don't have to apply it in spots where you're wasting, that's great. But they're really sensitive about this because water is something like 1/3 of the cost for an almond grower. I mean, it's a massive, it's the biggest input they have to manage. And so they're already pretty sensitive to like not just running it where they don't need it, because that's just dollars going down the drain. But this was one you kind of pointing out, like of a single line, just kind of fun to see. It's like, if you've got a crop that, hey, everything's pretty green here, that looks pretty good, green here, and then you've got one row where there's a lot more yellow or red starting to show up. In terms of a big field, that's just one line that actually got plotted there, and so they can go out and then actually check that out and address it. Yeah.
Do you guys use other data sources besides your cameras, or are you thinking about that eventually? I mean,
yeah, good question. So what we started to do is we incorporate like ground data in the form of like scouting. People get out there, they drop kids information. Here's what we're seeing, but not in a way that's been like highly structured yet as a like constant feedback loop to start to do any form of like ML on it, to do it to scale up how we like in an automated way prescribe solutions to problems. That's something that's coming up, and a great question for that. We will also work with them. We've tested out like ground sensors, microclimate sensors, pulling in those data sources, soil layers, other things like that. Our scientists if they can get their hands on more data, they like getting more data. Yield maps, another one that's really interesting to look at. We're moving into like yield forecasting. So there's all these by hand measurements that people do to estimate yield. We can get that data and then relate that to our imagery, so then we can scale it. It's a lot of building these like proprietary and super valuable ground truth data sets that are hard to scale, but once you've got them, you've got a real asset to build on that you can keep doing, and it makes it very hard for anybody else to catch up. And this is one of the reasons I'm so bullish on these sort of science-driven tech companies, because when you can figure it out, you can do something pretty amazing. As far as at least barriers to entry and scalability, I built apps and stuff before, and it's a very different situation. This is just another phone. This is a potato field, and this thing looks like spin art, right? And they don't want it to look like that. They want it to look nice and even. So again, this pivot that's running around, and potatoes, by the way, fascinating industry, completely driven by McDonald's. McDonald's is the high price payer for potatoes, and so the gold standard is like, you grow the best potatoes, you get to sell the Mac, as they call it. And that's top dollar. But they built into the contracts all of these quality controls, because if you notice, when you go to McDonald's, you don't get brown fries, and they don't like fries that have brown tips. And it turns out a lot of these things go back to water management, because the way you manage the water affects the way that the sugars develop and the starches early on in the life of the crop, and that affects whether you get these brown spots and things when they fry. And so they start to get this understanding between ultimately the quality that drives their contracts and what they need to do in season to try to produce the best crop. And so it's this constant game of, can I manage this to get the best crop out? And sugar beets are another interesting one in their own way, where they're growing these beets in the ground to produce a lot of sugar content. Nobody's really doing sugar cane in the U.S. anymore. And they have to grow this crop over 3 months and then store it for 9. And so then how you do this and trying to get a consistent crop that doesn't start to rot and other things like that, there's just some really fascinating challenges. And in their case, they're usually dealing with it's flooding. So I was up in Grand Forks, North Dakota a month back, meeting with them, and it was like the high was 5 degrees, and it was like frozen tundra out there, and just to learn about sugar beets. And so this is an example though where they saw our imagery, realized that they saw the streaking. They were like, what the heck? Early in the season, this would have cost them a huge amount of yield and quality, and basically all of the potatoes in the outer portion of this pivot. This is an 80-acre field here you're looking at. They went out and made a change, but they realized they had a mineralization problem, deposits occurring in the pivot. Cleared that out, and you can see already in 1 week's time, massively improved. So able to respond very, very quickly, make a dent on it. This paid for the imagery over the entire growing operation, a couple thousand acres, 2,000-3,000 acres. just a little view of we're also starting to do cumulative measures, so beyond just that, like you were asking for the one-time fix, as we start to get years worth of data, we're able to show how in tracking this in different areas of your field and what they call blocks, we can sort of measure an accumulated stress as a result of irrigation and water, and how that drives yield loss, and how that drives differences in the growth of the canopy and the vegetation. And so now we're starting to get this multi-year data set that also from a kind of strategic point of view, there's a lot of value to that, a lot of locking. You're not going to want to switch, keep working with us, figuring out new ways to incorporate this into your practices, which is that's kind of an exciting area for us that we're starting to do more and more with now with these customers, now that we have a few who have a few years of data. Won't spend too much time here, but other types of water problems in the Midwest is like you get too much water in the spring, seeds rot in the ground, and then they don't emerge. And then what you've got to do is deal with that in a way of saying, hey, maybe I need to go replant in those areas. And some of these might actually be your best soils. If you didn't replant, you're going to lose a lot of yield. They might have sprung up around here because these are dry soils that run out really quickly, so the crop came up. These ones, kind of heavier clay soils, held onto a lot of water, so the seed rotted. But hey, actually, once that cold spring is gone, you might have 6 weeks of not a lot of water, and so these soils actually would have been your best for growing a really good crop, and you would want to replant, otherwise you would have missed out on that. So I don't want to spend much time here. This is just to show you that, kind of moving into other areas. Obviously, the focus here is water, but pest and disease in the Midwest was the big thing. Like I said, they can't manage water. It's one of our our big efforts this past year was early detection of pest and disease. So if you looked at this crop, it's a soybean here, it looks great to the naked eye. And what we can detect is this signal of stress here, the disturbance index. And really underneath the canopy, you see that this is a Cercospora outbreak that's starting. And usually by the time a pest or disease problem makes it to the top of the canopy, it's like 80-90% set in, you've lost most of the yield. So getting it at this stage is kind of a game changer, just trying to time your fungicide application right. And that's what that's kind of driving a lot of the recent growth for the company. And then if you want to contact me, a little bit about me there, but happy to chat, and really interested in if you're building a company in this space, or if you want to get into a company in this space. I mean, it's an area I'm really passionate about, connecting with founder outlets. I mean, I've been a founder myself. Techstars is launching an ag tech accelerator in Minneapolis. We've been working with them as a mentor. Investors and just advising, learning, how do you test stuff really quickly, how do you build an R&D team. These are all the areas where just people, I want to help people build companies in this space and get going, because I just think it's really exciting. I've learned a ton, and just trying to share that with others. So thanks for your time and attention, guys, and I'm happy to hang around and do questions.
Yes.
So, yeah.
How would you profile your user? Like what sort of is there just like a master grower kind of who's fairly well educated about all this, or are there like farmhands who are also interacting with your like iPads that have the imaging on it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you have multiple user types. So you do have the guys, like the irrigation guys and the scouts out in the field. They're going to be sort of like the lowest tech, but they might have a phone, an iPhone, but they also might need to just like take a printout and run out there if they don't even have that. So that's sort of one user type. You sell to the guy who's managing the farm, managing the ranch. And he mostly is going to care that his operations people think that our imagery helps them do their job. And he wants kind of rolled up sort of analytics on the whole thing just to see how things are going. So that's how we work with them. And then there's also, in the Midwest, there's another customer, which is the ag retailer, who sells to all these farms. So in California and almonds and stuff, we go direct to the grower. But out there, you would never do it. It's very fragmented, lots of small farms, not a lot of money in them. So you work with the retailer who has this like 20-year relationship with them and sells to thousands of them. And so in that case, then you can get like a 100,000 acre commitment from them to work across a lot of their growers. And that introduces a new one too, because they're saying, hey, I've got to scout 100 fields in this area. I actually want you to help me prioritize which ones I'm going to regionally over the whole spot, and introduces sort of new areas of development for us.
Great. Thank you, Anthony. And he'll be around afterwards to answer more.
All right, so now we have a little audible in the program. Instead of Carrie Waters, we've got Jennifer and Andrew of Buoy who will be tag teaming the presentation. Welcome.
Thank you. Hey, so first and foremost, happy World Water Day. I know it's the holiday that we all look forward to the most every year. So thanks for having us. We're super happy to be here. Carrie, our founder, was going to be presenting tonight, but unfortunately could not make it. Her last name is Waters. I know we were talking about names and destiny earlier, so I think that she was definitely destined to start this company. So one thing that was mentioned earlier was the trillion gallons, right? It's about 1 trillion gallons a year that's lost just to leaks in households alone. It's a crazy amount of water that we're just losing. And Buoy is here to address that. So I'll let our senior data scientist, Andrew Pike, take it away and explain what we do and some of the details around that. Thanks, guys.
How's it going?
Good.
So, I'm Andrew. I'll introduce myself. I'm actually a hydrologist by background. I spent the better part of a decade as a research hydrologist for NOAA, where I worked. A lot of the work I did had to do with water quality modeling for a lot of the large water projects in the state. State Water Project, the Central Valley Water Project. And a lot of that work happened during the drought when things got really heated, and would go to meetings in Sacramento and decisions had to be made and life was very difficult. I thought to myself, there has to be a better way. Perhaps technology can help us here. So now I am the senior data scientist at Buoy Labs.
There's a stick right there if you want to.
Oh,
Up
can
on
I
the
just
top.
touch the button?
You can do that too.
I'll do that.
That has a laser pointer on it.
So I had a little confession. I did not know today was World Water Day. I woke up this morning, it was not on my mind. In fact, I didn't even know I would be giving this presentation today. I learned about midday that Carrie could not make it, and I was told that Jen and I were coming. I had slides prepared for, this was a talk that I gave to engineering students at UCSC. And I thought, well, let's just bring them and we'll go from there. So, winging it, and really, I would love for you to help me out, interrupt me, keep this casual. I'll go through some slides, tell you what Buoy's about, and at the end, Jen will show us a buoy. All right, who here is a homeowner? Only San Franciscans. I asked that to undergrads at UCSC. There are not too many. But who has paid a water bill? And most of us. Who has gotten a surprise on their water bill one time or another? All right, maybe something happened. You sprung a leak, a toilet ran for too long, and suddenly it's a few $100s more than you expected to pay. Water is just getting more expensive, and across the country. Certainly California is expensive, but other places like Atlanta as well, where decaying infrastructure, like sewage systems, ends up being funded by water users. And water is getting scarce. We all know this. Cape Town in South Africa is nearly out of water. There's severe rationing going on. Arab Emirates even considered importing icebergs from Antarctica to solve water crises in the Middle East. And of course, in the west here is the California River and all the water problems it has. And we need better solutions. There are very expensive solutions like desalination in California, or you can pump water from the Mojave, groundwater from the Mojave to LA, or pump water from northern Nevada to Vegas. But what if you could just save 10% by reducing all your leaks and just paying more attention to how much is being used? So, quick question. Show of hands, how much water does the average household in the U.S. consume daily? Show of hands, is it more than 50 gallons? Is it more than 100 gallons? More than 200 gallons? More than 300? More than, you guys you're good. Right at 250. That's the official statistic. And here's one. This is one thing I didn't know before I started this job. Is hand washing more efficient than using a dishwasher? No, I see the, yeah, we actually had a customer say to us, why am I using 90 gallons a week on my sink? And we said, well, do you have a dishwasher? They did not. They thought hand washing was more efficient. A dishwasher, a single cycle, 4 gallons. And should I use less water when I brush my teeth?
Probably.
Maybe if you want to feel good about it, but probably not. In the end scheme of things, it's a very insignificant amount of your total total household water. So I have a breakdown here, just to give you some numbers and clue you into what's normal. Taking a bath, about 36 gallons. Flushing an inefficient toilet at 3 gallons, 6 to 8 times a day is about 20 gallons. Take a 10-minute shower, another 20 gallons. Washing machine, 15. Dishwasher, 4 to 10. Hygiene, only 2.5. We really don't use that much water when we're sitting at a sink. And only 1 gallon is what we drink. And 10% is lost to leaks. And not only is that bad for the water supply or potentially your water bill, but it can also cause mold. It can run up your water bill, and a catastrophic leak could literally result in thousands of dollars more in insurance claims. One thing I noticed when I started this job and telling people what I do is everybody had a leak story and it always happened when they were on vacation. It was the same story every time. I was on vacation, my neighbor called me, there was water everywhere in my lawn or in my house, 2 feet of water, and it cost me $100,000 in insurance claims. It can get bad. And that is where Buoy comes in. Buoy is an IoT device, a smart water meter that is installed in line on your house, single point, monitors your water usage, gives you real-time information about your water usage. It detects anything anomalous, and it will alert you if it sees you're using too much water or what it thinks is a leak. And if you get a leak alert on your phone, you can just hit a button and remotely shut off your water. So if you are out of the house on vacation, something happens, problem solved. This is a testimonial from. Oh yes.
Can you disaggregate what is? I mean, can you sort of guess like, well, your dishwasher's on now, or somebody's taking a shower?
Yeah. So does this? Good question. Is that the next slide? No. Haven't done these slides much. Yes, disaggregation is a key part of it. So we look at we get a time series of water views, and we disaggregate it into discrete water events and classify those events based on their usage type. So we know a shower from a dishwasher, from a sink, from a sprinkler, from a garden hose. We have about 14, 15 different categories, and we can detect if 2 of those are happening at the same time, 3 of those are happening at the same time. One person is taking a shower, another person flushed the toilet, someone else is running the laundry. All of that will be disaggregated. Yeah.
Another point on his question, how do you distinguish a persistent leak, but maybe one that's not dramatic from just baseline use?
Yeah, what are you thinking, like a very slow leak or something that occurs intermittently?
Well, either one.
So there are several different types of leaks, and it's kind of hard to say leak because that encompasses a lot of things. People think catastrophic pipe burst. That's one we actually haven't seen one yet. Most of the leaks that we see are either slow leaks from either a valve that wasn't fully shut off, someone left or a valve that was just worn, or something gets left on at full blast, like a running toilet. We have also seen cases where we had somebody say, why did I use 900 gallons for my toilet? Why is Buoy saying this? And I thought to myself, didn't do my job right, the machine learning algorithm isn't working right. And then I went into the data and looked at it. Every 2.5 minutes, they had a toilet flush. It was just a worn valve. It was one of those cases where if you're in your house, you can kind of hear it. You hear water running, but you don't really think about it. But that was 900 gallons in, I think, a day. It was a lot of water. And we told him, oh, running toilet. And 5 minutes later, he emailed us back, said, absolutely right. So there's many different types of leaks, and we, as we continue growing out and see more and more stories, we learn to detect them. And I have to say, I've learned so much about the ways that people use water in ways I didn't even imagine, things I didn't even think were household appliances that you could use water in. Let's see. So yes, we have all those features. We have an app where we display all this information and make it very easy to digest for every user. You can read that. This is an actual Facebook comment that we got. Yeah. It's real. I didn't make that one up. They literally lost 1,000 gallons of water and $300. So we are selling and shipping buoys right now. They are priced at $800, and this is a key piece. That includes a professional or an install by a professional plumber. To get a buoy on a house, you do have to cut pipe, which can be invasive and intimidating to, I would say, even most people who consider themselves handy. So we partnered with different plumbing networks, so we get somebody out there, get it on your house, and start collecting the data. And we'll see one of those at the end of the talk. Yeah.
What's the financial case? Like if I'm a homeowner, what kind of payback period might I see if I have like kind of old hardware, new hardware, you know?
Like old appliances or new appliances?
Yeah.
Yeah. It really differs homeowner to homeowner. There are some people who just like tech gadgets and toys and will throw $800 and just see this thing. And there are others who are actually concerned, you know, rightfully so, about the value in that. And it's difficult to say because water districts are so differently priced that we can't translate that immediately to dollars for a person. But with the peace of mind that comes with the leak detection, we can say that you will probably either waste a lot of water in one or two major events, and it may be damaging or it may be not.
I was going to ask you don't have dollars, you have just average water savings, and then people could like translate themselves.
I can interject there. It's about 2 to 4 years if you're just catching that 10% of leaks. That's average, depending on your water pricing and the structure of your water pricing. If you catch a catastrophic leak, then it's obviously considerably faster.
Still pretty good.
Yeah. Just to piggyback, have you seen a behavioral shift in the people that are using the app? So even if they're not catching leaks, they're seeing a savings?
Really dependent on the users. It just depends on what kind of user you are. So as all of you know, you have lots of different kind of users. You have people who are really into their tech gadgets and they get one of these installed and they're on the app every day going through it. Probably a more common case would be somebody who gets it. It's really interactive for the first couple of weeks. Maybe makes some slight changes in their water usage, like is like, wow, my teenage daughter is using 1,000 gallons for a shower. You know, like she should stop taking hour-long showers. And then after a couple of weeks, they don't check in very often unless they're catching leaks.
Can you go back and look at smart water meters and sort of take some of the lessons you've learned from like higher resolution sensing and then say apply them to what people are using regular?
What do you mean higher resolution sensing?
I mean, I'm guessing your sensor is better than the smart meter in terms of the time resolution.
Yeah. You mean the meter actually on your house that will charge or send it to the water district? And
right. So if you could have that data versus your data, What, I guess your basic question, what's the difference in the data?
Yeah, in terms of volume, it's incredibly accurate. It's about 98, we'd say 98%. So within plus or minus 2% of volumetrically. So it captures what that is capturing. But we're looking at it at 1 second resolution.
Our hardware is really robust. We're focused a lot more on the software, so it's a utility grade meter that's in that device.
Question back there first.
Are you envisioning some kind of partnership with home insurances?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have been talking with an insurance company. They've been very enthusiastic about testing these devices. And,
When you install it, are you accounting for, like, where on the main do you install it? Where it goes into the house, or where it goes before the split out to irrigation, or?
Yeah, this is another thing we learned. One of our co-founders, Hillary Bryant, she was the former mayor of Santa Cruz, and she's transitioned to hanging out with plumbers and going to every one of these installs. And they are all so different.
Yeah.
There's nothing standard about it at all. Some people have a split, some people don't. You could put it on the main, and sometimes it will capture outdoor water usage, other times it won't. It really varies according to house.
Do you ever have any customer issues where what you've recorded is inconsistent with what they've been billed by the district?
We have not had that dispute yet. I'd like to see that though.
What do you install in my place then?
Yeah.
We have like one of those houses where there's like multiple units, and so they just kind of split the bill with us, and it just sort of like, the numbers never really make sense, but I have no good way to actually have a real measure on it, and it's like, I'd love to use something like this and just use that to check.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, have you thought about agriculture?
We have focused strictly on residential for the sake of getting the product out there. We have informally talked about agriculture, commercial buildings, really anywhere that uses water. Agriculture, as you know, is a whole different beast because there's so much spatial variability.
That's true, but also probably what, like 80% of the state's consumption of water or something like that?
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's in the future, but certainly interested.
How many water utilities or water districts have like actual smart meters? Because in Seattle, there was a person that came around every 2 months to physically check the meter. Like, so that was your granularity. It was a 2-month snapshot, and you're sort of like, okay.
Yeah.
As an energy,
You know the answer to that?
It's
Your research you've been doing lately?
No, that's actually something we're currently researching. There's not a standard place that you can go and find that information, but it's really highly variable.
I'll add a little bit. You're absolutely right. There's not a lot of data on that, but actually, from what so we're sort of in the similar space, but in the commercial side. So what we've learned is that a lot of the homes or a lot of America actually still is not metered. Sacramento wasn't metered for a long time until like last year or 2 years ago when they put together a budget to meter a lot of the homes in Sacramento. So it's the metering is still a problem, and then most of the meters out there are still manual readers. Someone went out, and then you have AMR technology that you need readers to go out. So from what I've learned, we estimate about less than 5% are what's called AMI meters that are using, they're sending data at 15 to 30 minute intervals, but it's very, very slow adoption. It's very costly to change them. But in a way, for utilities, they're focused on getting those meters out rather than, and that's where what you guys doing it's valuable. So.
Yeah, the metering thing's really interesting. I mean, to me at least, to learn that so much of the country is still unmetered. When, like, we all know, at least in California, right? We all know that water is a valuable resource, and that, like, during the drought, we were all requested to use a lot less, which is a really hard thing to do if you don't know what you're using your water for. no plumbing plans. So in order to put in a utility box, they were going to have to excavate the entire yard and then figure out where the box needed to go based on how the plumbing is set up. And they were looking at a cost between $15,000 and $30,000 per house, which is a really low incentive for utilities.
Yeah, I guess on the topic of water districts, we have been actively talking with many water districts about implementing a rebate program of some type where they could help subsidize a portion of this cost. And that has included some of the larger water districts, but also some very small ones. And the small ones actually have been the most enthusiastic about the idea because, yeah.
Supposedly, a third to half of water that's harvested is lost in transmission in the municipal pipes.
Mhm.
So do you have any connection to that situation?
We do not yet. Yeah, we'd love to. That's a very difficult problem because even with all the information in the world, somebody has to go out there and repair it. And that, it gets very expensive and time consuming.
Are you selling direct to the consumer, or are you selling through retail, or through contractors?
Direct to consumer. Can be ordered on our website, but we also do some B2B. Sell in bulk to businesses or contractors for new housing developments. If they're putting 80 units in and they want 80 buoys, one for each house. That's kind of the business model.
How does it measure water flow?
It's a nutating disk meter, and so it's actually quite mechanical in that way. We measure rotations of a disk that's being pushed around by the pressure.
So it's a 6-month battery charge, right? And so then you just go out and you get a little warning on the app. And
Yeah. So that is one thing I should mention is it is battery powered. We put a lot of time and effort into getting that done and getting it done well. The main concern, like on my house, I could just run. I had one of the older models that didn't quite have the battery going quite yet, so it had to be constantly plugged in. But I could just. It was right by my garage, so I could just run an extension line. Still kind of a pain, but there have been some installs where you would literally have to drill a hole in the wall to get it plugged in. So, with battery, we do say 6 months, and there is. You can check the battery health, and it will send a warning if it's getting low, and it's.
Does it shut off the valve when the battery dies?
It does not. That would be horrible. That's one of the difficult things about having a shutoff valve is the worst thing that could happen with the customer is the valve gets stuck in the off position. Because that's not something we can help them out with support-wise over the phone. We'd have to get somebody out there. So no, the default is always to keep it open.
Do you have a lot of challenges with connectivity? Wi-Fi based, like people change their password or?
So it is Wi-Fi based. We spend a lot of time getting the onboarding done correctly. So now you can onboard it directly with Bluetooth, so that if you change your Wi-Fi password, you just have to connect back to the device with Bluetooth, give it the new password. It'll work seamlessly. And in future iterations, we're looking into cell connectivity for more rural locations and other RF protocols.
So if you took 15-second read intervals, would that extend the battery life by another 6 months or another 18 months?
No, actually collecting the data is not energy intensive at all. The biggest challenge battery-wise and energy-wise is connecting to Wi-Fi. Every time it does that to transmit, that is where we see most of the consumption.
And is that done like on the hour, every hour, or like at midnight or something?
No, every couple minutes.
Every couple minutes.
I'm not sure if you mentioned this already, but like if there's a leak in the pipeline somewhere, can you like locate it exactly, like where the leak is?
No, we cannot do that yet. But We do have a customer support team, which we love to hear these stories. We love to help people diagnose their leaks. One of the key tenets is we just want to have the best customer service out there and engage people with their water, because for many people it's a very new experience. They see something happen when they're not home, they're scared, they're frightened. They see that first leak alert. It might not be anything bad, but it almost like elicits panic in them. And so we just want to be there for them to help them actually diagnose what it is. For the most part, it's usually something that was just left on.
Do you charge a recurring like service charge for data, or do they buy this once and then get it lifetime?
Yeah, since this is the the first iteration, it's a lifetime subscription for the life of the device. Future iterations may have, especially with different types of connectivity, would have different plans.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing too, of like, or even like if it really works, like a percentage of the savings, and then expand it out, and lower the cost of initial or at cost, whatever it is, and you can maybe up the lifetime value, make it easier to adopt. But
All right, I think we're just about out of time, but if you want to
Quick
take
hand for
open up to you.
So now it's time to show and tell. We've got a buoy, a flow, and an airplane. Yes. No? Yeah. So we gotta do that up here, or we can break and go grab some more drinks and food and do it around there. What do you all want?
Second.
Okay. Okay. Thank you all.
You need to take that up. You need to eject it. I think it might be ejected.